Section 30. An-Naba to An-Nas. This section begins with Surah An-Naba, which deals with resurrection, mentioning creation as a proof of Allah's power to recreate. Hellfire and paradise are described. Surah An-Nazi'at similarly speaks of resurrection, mentioning those who deny and speaking of the claim of Pharaoh to divinity and how he was subsequently destroyed. The unbelievers are then reminded of the creation around them, which is of a greater magnitude than them, to show their insignificance in creation. The surah ends by discussing the moment of the hour. Surah Abasa then speaks about the responsibility of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam in calling, the power of Allah in creation, and a reminder of the terrifying moments of the day when no one will help another person, even those closest to them. Surah At-Takwir then speaks of the changes that precede the Day of Judgment, the nature of revelation brought by Jibreel alayhi salam, and a rejection of the false claims of the unbelievers against the final revelation. Surah Al-Infitar similarly begins with a description of the changes that precede the Day of Judgment, but questions humans as to why they deny. They are reminded of the recording angels. The surah ends by speaking of the different destinations for the successful and the losers, and a description of the day itself. Surah Al-Mutaffifin starts by warning people who cheat in trading of the Day of Judgment. The rest of the surah details the difference between sinners and the righteous, ending with a reminder of how the righteous are mocked in this world. Surah Al-Inshiqaq speaks of the changes that precede the Day of Judgment and then reminds people of their destinations. The surah ends by warning the unbelievers of the consequences of not accepting the message. Surah Al-Buruj then speaks of the struggles of the believers, using those who were thrown into ditches burning with fire as an example, but reminding that Allah avenges such acts. Surah At-Tariq asks humans to reflect over their origins and to realize that resurrection is possible. The surah ends with a reminder of the serious nature of the revelation and warns the unbelievers. Surah Al-A'la speaks of the greatness of Allah in creating, reminds the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam of the preservation of the Qur'an, and describes those who will and who will not benefit from its message. Surah Al-Ghashiyah speaks of the next world with its hardships for the unbeliever and the ease and pleasure for the believers, and of certain signs in creation for people to recognize the Creator. Surah Al-Fajr speaks of the punishment of past nations, of the tests that humans face, and gives descriptions of the next world. Surah Al-Balad begins by praising the land of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then speaks of certain individuals in Mecca who were deluded by their wealth. The surah then speaks of the Day of Judgment and the two types of people. Surah Ash-Shams speaks of the human soul, of purifying it and ruining it. Surah Al-Layl speaks of the efforts of humans and the two possible destinations. Surah Al-Duha is a reminder to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and of the favors of Allah to him, thereby instructing him sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and as for the blessings of your Lord, proclaim. Surah Al-Inshirah speaks of the special rank of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Surah At-Tin also speaks of his special rank sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but also gives us an insight into the human being. Surah Al-Alaq speaks of revelation, human rebellion, and the attempts of Abu Jahl to prevent the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam from worship. Surah Al-Qadr speaks about the secrets of the unique night of power. Surah Al-Bayyinah speaks of the people of the book's stance towards the message of sincerity and of the abodes of unbelievers and believers. Surah Al-Zalzalah speaks of the end of this world. Surah Al-Adiyat speaks of human denial and love of wealth. Surah Al-Qari'ah describes the day of judgment. Surah Al-Takathur speaks of the distractions that busy human beings from the realities of the next world. Surah Al-Asr defines the successful and unsuccessful human. Surah Al-Humazah warns of those who speak ill of others and amass wealth. Surah Al-Fil speaks of the miracle of the protection of Mecca, while Surah Quraysh reminds the people of Mecca of the great blessings of security and provision. Surah Al-Ma'un speaks of the person who denies and the hypocritical worshipper. Surah Al-Kawthar reminds of the great blessings the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam received. Surah Al-Kafirun is a complete disavowal of anything to do with unbelief. Surah Al-Nasr being a reminder of humbling oneself when the greatest victory comes. Surah Al-Masad is a condemnation of Abu Lahab and his wife for standing against the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Surah Al-Ikhlas is a surah that teaches us the nature of the Lord. Surah Al-Falaq is the surah that teaches us protection from external harms. And finally, Surah An-Nas that teaches us how to protect ourselves from the enemy within.